Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to talk about the Dragonflight Alpha Mistweaver drop, which we have long been waiting for. It's the final healer to get released on Dragonflight's Alpha, and one that a ton of people had a lot of anticipation for because of just how many talents and covenant abilities and enhancements that are almost there. Or in other cases, what other abilities that we've had in the past that have not been brought forward for a number of years, and then seeing some older talents or older abilities for certain classes get brought into the future. So they finally released it today. I have a chance to go over some of the dungeons and play around with a couple different builds, but unfortunately there's a lot that's just not implemented just yet. So when I went through it, we also went through the brand new dungeon, the Onaran Plains, or the Battle for Onara, whatever it is. And it's actually a pretty sick dungeon. You get to do dragon riding while you're in the middle of the dungeon. But with Mistweaver, there's a ton of different synergistic setups when it comes to a raid or a Mythic Plus build, and I just had a crazy amount of fun being able to go through it. And kind of similar to Shaman, it sort of felt like there was this just overwhelming sensation that you couldn't take all the things that you wanted. Whereas something like Holy or Disc Priest, it seemed like you were about getting everything that you really wanted, the big building blocks almost. But there's so many different legendaries tossed into the talent tree, and even 2 covenant abilities, which I was not super happy about, that it does seem like it's a bit overwhelming to be able to grab all the things that you wanted. But some of the big highlights are Phalanx Stomp and Bonus Brew coming back as different talents. Although they haven't really received a ton of changes in terms of what they are. There are some augments for Phalanx which are new, which are allowing your damage abilities to convert directly into healing, which is amazing. Whereas for Bonus Brew, it's about the same, and you get kind of like the Unity Legendary rolled into it, as well as like Conduits rolled into it as well if you wanted to select them, but they're also at the bottom of the tree that you have. They also talked about having some support for a more caster-oriented Mistweaver, which is kind of true and kind of not true. There's a lot of different like A-B choices where you could say, I'd like to take Focus Thunder or Upwelling. Whereas later on, you have to choose between Rising Mist or Tear of Morning, or Clouded Focus, where your Soothing Mist channel is going to reduce the cost of your Envelop or Vivify. You can choose between that or Ancient Teachings of the Monastery, which is a very strange setup where you're choosing between Shadowlands Talents versus a Shadowlands Legendary on like the different options. And I would say one of the biggest things I noticed very early on is this tree is just a freaking mess. When it comes to like the balance between raids or M+, or 5-mans versus, raids versus M+, or a melee style or versus a caster style, it's kind of all jumbled all over the place. You'll have some buffs and abilities like Rising Mist, which are in the right side of the tree or the middle right side at the end of the tree. But then you have Phalanx Stomp, which is supposed to very heavily encourage that sort of build, on the far left side, which pushes you into Soothing Mist talents, which is a little strange, you know, or something like Yu'lon's Whisper, which is just kind of extra spew AoE healing. So there's a lot of strange things going on with that. And then when you look at the class tree, however, it seems a lot better designed by comparison. You're very quickly and easily able to see a bit of a split off between healing and damage. And there is the massive benefit of having instant cast Vivify, which I don't know if it's actually going to be able to make it over to live servers, but that was one of the first things I noticed, and it felt freaking amazing when you're trying to play a more melee-oriented Mistweaver specs. That was great. It's super easy to get the interrupt, and you can also have access to Fort Brew with all the attachments and all the cooldown reduction and all the benefits there, dampen harm and diffuse magic very, very easily as you're setting your class tree up. So when it comes to your tankiness, as long as you're popping your cooldowns and defensives and everything in advance, you're going to be very, very tanky and very strong. But the downside of the class tree is it seems like the polish sort of faded about halfway down, or maybe at the last third of the way down, as the capstones are all pretty cruddy. As any sort of monk, you could choose between Black Ox statue and the Temple and the Jade Serpent statue, but the Jade Serpent statue is also like the one in Shadowlands where it only channels for 8 seconds, and I don't know why anybody would want to, whether they're a Mistweaver, a Brewmaster, or a Windwalker, I don't know why any monk would actually want to channel Soothing Mist once every 8 or 9 seconds to maintain a channel. I have no idea. I don't know why it still works that way, and it drives me insane. That being said, there are a number of different sort of utility aspects where you can give the raid verse, or sorry, you can give the raid avoidance or leech or speed, which are all cool, but by and large, having that as like one of your last sort of talents on your class tree, and it feels very filler-ish, was not super appealing to me either. But I did also want to check out some of the class trees, so if you wanted to check these out as well with me, these are some of the different builds that I was kind of messing around with, and, you know, again, not the end-all, be-all by any means, but some interesting things that I wanted to be able to point out and also better visualize it for you. Spirit of the Crane. You can take Spirit of the Crane to get the mana regen and everything from Teachings of the Monastery, at the same time as taking Mana Tea or Life Cycles. I freaking hate Life Cycles so much, but I thought it was pretty interesting that you have two different mana options on hand. And when I was running these dungeons, I actually felt like I was pretty confident with my mana, as long as I was constantly churning out Renewing Mists. And boy, oh boy, is that something that you're going to be able to do extraordinarily well, is cast Renewing Mist. You have this not yet implemented Rapid Diffusion, where Rising Sun Kick and Enveloping Mist apply Renewing Mist for 6 seconds to an ally. You also are going to have a couple of other benefits where Renewing Mist is a chance to immediately spread to an additional target when the initially cast or when it's traveling to a new target. So maybe seeing if there's some synergy between Dancing Mist and the Rapid Diffusion could be really good. There's also Misty Peaks, where Renewing Mist's hot effect has a 10% chance to proc Enveloping Mist on that target. And assuming you're able to toss out all of these hot effects, even though they are diminished, you still would want to be casting a lot of Rising Sun Kick for Rapid Diffusion. So you could be taking Rising Mist alongside of that. So one Rising Sun Kick will be applying a Renewing Mist to the target. There we go. Excuse me. One Rising Sun Kick will apply a Renewing Mist to the target. A second Rising Sun Kick will then extend that one and spread a new one. You could even start looking at taking something like Focus Thunder for an extra charge of Thunder Focus Tea for another Rising Sun Kick to be able to cast them off back to back. But you also do have some big benefits like Font of Life and Upwelling being able to be accessed very easily, which could also synergize into Rising Mists. You're churning out all of these hot effects and being able to extend them, and they have a naturally longer duration. And keep in mind how Rising Mist works is it's based on the initial duration of the hot, and that's how it works for the extensions. So potentially, if you're able to have a lot of haste and a lot of cooldown reduction tied into Rising Sun Kick, you could have a lot of extensions for naturally longer lasting hot effects like Upwelling. As much as I hate Upwelling, I know. Another thing would be, I don't know how it would work because it's not yet implemented, but would that mean that a Renewing Mist applied for 6 seconds would have a 6-second cap, so it would be 2 Rising Sun Kicks to extend fully? Or would it actually follow the 15-second-ish, I believe is what it is? The 15-second duration, or sorry, 20-second duration of Renewing Mist where it naturally is. That would be an interesting thing to figure out as well once it's actually properly implemented. Some of the synergies for the Celestials, you can take Invoke Yu'lon or Chi-Ji in the exact same breath, which is wonderful. You're going to be able to instantly have access to Enveloping Breath, which is great. Gift of the Celestials is going to allow you to have a slightly lower cooldown, actually a substantially lower cooldown out of your Celestial, but decreases its duration. So you'll have a 12-13 second Yu'lon or 12-13 second Chi-Ji. But then you can also really easily take Invoker's Delight, which is going to give you a massive haste benefit, which could last longer than the duration of your Celestial, which is kind of interesting. So you can very quickly bust out some Enveloping Mists to get Enveloping Breath spread out, because you don't really need a 30-second freaking duration out of your Celestial. You never really did. The danger had passed in the first 10-15 seconds, and they're all pretty long-lasting hot effects as well, with the Enveloping Breath lasting over the course of, I believe, 6 seconds. So most of the danger is going to eventually pass at the end of that 12-13 second duration, so I think it's a great talent to be able to have access to. Some of the other ones that I was not a super big fan of, there seems to be quite a bit of focus on Soothing Mist talents, like Peaceful Mending, just getting more healing onto the target. Clouded Focus is back once again. Like I said, this is not like an end-all, be-all, take this stuff. You know, we're just testing everything. There's another one with Calming Coalescence, where the absorb amount of your next life cocoons increased. Some of those things, I just don't really see the spec sitting there channeling Soothing Mist anymore. Some interesting positives and some interesting returning abilities. You're going to have access to Zen Pulse again. which I think is the first time since like Warlords or something, correct me if I'm wrong, where it's just a quick burst out of whoever you cast it on, and based off how many enemies that are hit, you're able to heal that target for X amount. This one was kind of bugged. I don't know if it was even working properly in the dungeon I was running, but proof of concept, I think is going to be a pretty slick talent to be able to run into keys and just be able to net some extra damage while offering support to anybody who's really in range of any enemies. Life Cocoon's getting a 2-minute cooldown, but it has some really easy to get synergistic abilities. You still have Nourishing Chi, which is increasing the heal over time effect, and it lingers even if the shield is removed. But you also get Mist of Life, which instantly applies Renewing Mist and Enveloping Mist to the target, which is something I freaking love. It's just some very simple ways to be able to make Life Cocoon a bit better, a bit stronger. And if you're very easily able to take the Cocoon talents and go 1, 2, 3 in short order, that just feels a lot better to be able to utilize the ability rather than put up a Cocoon, it gets broken by melee damage, and then there's nothing left. There's no lingering benefits. Here you're able to toss up both your hots, you're able to easily extend them with something like Rising Mist, or just benefit from the healing increase onto the target because your Vivifies are going to be instant cast and you can just bomb healing into the target when they're taking 30% more healing because they have Enveloping Mist on them, and you're able to go to work. There's also other talents like Overflowing Mist, which was the Azerite trait back in Battle for Azeroth, where you're healing the target based off their maximum health every time they take damage when they have Enveloping Mist on them. So even more synergy to maintain those healing over time effects and to benefit your group by dealing damage in a productive way. So it's not always your damage converts instantly into healing, but it's you're augmenting and you're improving your healing over time effects by their own extensions. And I freaking love that about Mistweaver. I'm a huge nerd about that stuff. There is actually some healing directly through damage, which is awesome. Awaken Feline, which also is not yet implemented. Your abilities reset Feline Stomp 100% more often. And while you're within the stomp, your Tiger Palms strike 2 targets, and your Spinning Crane Kick heals nearby allies for 15% of the damage done. The Tiger Palm stuff is kind of interesting if you wanted to run with like a Spirit of the Crane, and then you can instantly get more blackout kicks, or just cleave off onto other targets and just kind of make Tiger Palm feel better. Again, it wasn't implemented, so I'm not able to fully be able to test all that kind of stuff out, but that would be pretty interesting. You also are getting the Blackout Kick Cleave, which I believe was part of like a Torghast abilities or Torghast powers that you're having on hand. So just more ways to be able to hit a variety of targets and still be pretty dang productive, which feels awesome. So I'm very excited to mess around with Feline Stomp. There's a couple of odd ones. One of them is Tea Aplenty, where Thunder Focus Tea also grants Enveloping Mist, Essence Font, Renewing Mist, Rising Sun Kick, and Vivify 1 extra charge at random. Not a huge fan of the randomosity buffs, especially when they're at the bottom of the tree. Just don't even want to touch that one. The Restorative Proliferation just extends an Enveloping Mist 30% heal buff to somebody. It doesn't actually send Enveloping Mist off onto somebody else, so whatever. Onto that one. And Secret Infusion's back. Huge fan of Secret Infusion. So there's a lot of like good things from BFA that got brought forward that I'm extremely excited about. But with all of this, I don't really know if Mistweaver's going to be in the greatest spot for like a Raid or Mythic Plus environment. Zooming out from this, there's a lot of interesting things from a gameplay perspective. There's a lot of interesting things for raiding or Mythic Plus in terms of how your spec interacts and how you produce your healing. Way more interesting than just tossing out Essence Font and dealing damage and sending out your Venthyr clones to be able to do all the healing for you, and then you hit Revival and Refreshing Jade Wind, and then that's it. Way more interesting, and they still keep some of those pieces around. Thank goodness the clones are gone. But where's the raid utility? Where is the differences that start separating Mistweaver from the pack? What's the thing that you want to feel good about bringing to the raid as a Mistweaver besides healing? Okay? Holy Priest has had a number of changes to Symbol of Hope to improve it, to make it stronger, to make it more valuable, and they're still receiving changes to it going into Dragonflight. But on the side of Mistweaver, where's that utility? Where is that effort to start bringing some of those things to light? I love that they're trying to adapt and further flesh out the spec. I like that you're going to be able to have really easy access to the interrupt, really easy access to personal defensives. The mobility is still going to be very strong, and it doesn't feel like you're stretching yourself out. It doesn't feel like the talent tree is too wide, almost like the shaman tree feels, where you're just hard committing down one area or another, and you might miss something along the way that you might really enjoy. I don't quite see that, but I do feel like there is just a void for Mistweaver's utility in terms of what makes them awesome, and it's going to be very easy for one tier they're going to own because they're going to do tons more healing than everybody else. They'll have the Resto Druid situation they're under right now in Season 4, where, hey, Resto Druid just does tons of healing, lovely, I'm so happy, and then it hits them that everybody starts doing the same amount of healing, and then pure output healers just sort of get pushed to the wayside. If it comes to a key environment, how efficiently are you going to be able to do single target healing or prior target healing or mobile healing? Whatever this meta is going to bring to us in Season 1 of Dragonflight is also going to start raising a lot of questions as to, okay, what does each healer bring to the table? Historically, Mistweaver doesn't really do much damage in a key environment, and that's a concern. Historically, again, we don't know how it's going to be for Dragonflight, but historically, Mistweaver's not been great for sustaining its mana when there's not any seasonal affix to augment it. When there's something like Prideful, for example, which replenishes your mana bar 4 times a dungeon, maybe 5 times a dungeon. Yeah, Mistweaver loves all that mana return, but there were a lot of times that you just hard-oomed yourself on Prideful trying to heal it, and then people start bleeding out and dying, and it's rough. A lot more rough compared to other healers. So I would say Mistweaver has some very cool things and maybe a bit overwhelming for when it comes to how you heal and how you are feeling powerful. But all of that, I think, is going to be null and void if the tuning isn't there, if they're not going to be just blasting healing and blowing other healers out of the water in terms of their overall output. Then you're just looking at what they bring to the table, and there's a severe lack of raid utility that gets brought alongside it. Now, you might ask me, well, what do you mean by that? Or what other classes have got utility or something along those lines? Well, boom, let me tell you. Why in the world did Holy Paladin get Amplify Magic, which was a former mage ability back in Warlords of Draenor that increased raid-wide healing received? Why did that just get rolled into Devotion Aura for no reason whatsoever? It's just unfathomable to me that they just, well, yeah, let's just shoehorn that in there for additional raid utility because Holy Paladins need it. And then that is where I'm coming from when I'm talking about what's that thing for Mistweaver to make them better. Overall, gameplay-wise, I'm kind of excited. Raid-wise, Mythic Plus-wise, as a healer that I'd probably want to bring to like my alt runs or maybe consider playing the most of or second or third most of for the next expansion, kind of worried. I don't see that big grab the way I saw it with what was then removed, the Discipline silence and everything like that for a 5-man with Divine Star. I got really excited about that, and then they removed it. You know, where's that big thing that sort of grabs me and makes me excited? I see a lot of things that are going to pump out tons of output, but those can always be tuned up and down. They can always make other healers more insane and more OP. So where is that for Mistweaver? That's what I'd like to see going into Dragonflight Beta and Mythic Plus and all the other good stuff that is still down the line for us to see. But otherwise, let me know. Be sure to link any of your Wowhead builds or anything like that if you're interested in just sharing some different ideas. Let me know what you think. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.